Hello, I'm Marvelous Drew, and this is Marvelous Drew's Movie Reviews. To start this off, I'm going to begin by reviewing the American Film Institute's 100 Greatest Movies of All Time, as seen by this list here. Citizen Kane was released in 1941 and was produced, directed, starred in, and co-written by Orson Welles. It is Welles' first feature film, received 9 Academy Award nominations, and won for Best Original Screenplay. The film follows the life of Charles Foster Kane, a newspaper mogul, as a group of journalists set out to discover the meaning behind his final words, Rosebud. The character of Kane is partially based off of William Randolph Hearst, as well as other prominent figures of the time, such as Pulitzer. Citizen Kane is widely considered to be the greatest film of all time, and it's basically the standard for filmmaking, especially from a technical point of view. And while it did not create some of the revolutionary techniques that it used, it did master them. And some of these techniques include camera movement, such as zooming in on a character really to show their emotion, like when they're getting angry. Low angle shots, which can be used to show like a character's power in a scene. Extreme close-ups, and having the background in focus. In one scene of the movie, we see Charles Kane as a young boy. We see his parents inside their home deciding on his future, and the mother sits at the table with a man I believe is a lawyer, and she's basically ready to go up custody of their son so that he can go live with this like rich family I believe it was, and like get this very high prestigious education. And then off to the side of the table stands Charles' father, and he's fighting to keep his son, arguing that they should not give up the child. And then, through the window, we see young Charles playing outside in the snow, completely unaware that his life is being decided for him inside. Now, at the time, the way this would have been shot is that you would have shot the mother in focus, and the father in the window, and everything that would have been out of focus. And then they would have shot the father, and everything, around him would have been out of focus. And then eventually we go out and shoot young Charles. He would be in focus. However, what Welles and director Greg Toland did was, when they shot the scene, all 3 prominent figures are in focus at one time. And this had never been done before. Like in the old ways, they would shot them all separately and then edit it together cut it together in the editing room. And Welles himself would cite that the reason that he was able to do things like that is simply because he didn't know any better, and no one told him that he couldn't. For another example, this is that one time it was during an interview on a talk show, and Welles was talking about how, because Welles came from a theater background, and this was his first feature film, as I believe I said. And he would go around and he was like setting up the lights and messing with stuff. And the thing is that on a movie set, that's not the director's responsibility. The lighting is handled by the camera department. Now, Toland, the director of photography, he's the head of the camera department. And what he was doing was he was following behind Kane and making changes and stuff. But he was telling everyone to let Kane go. Or, no, I'm sorry. I always make the mistake of referring to Orson Welles as Kane for some reason. So, yes, I'm sorry. So Toland was following behind Welles, watching what Welles was doing, and then, making slight adjustments afterwards. But he was telling everyone else not to let Welles know that he shouldn't be doing this, because he wanted to see what he could come up with and stuff. Now, the film is significant also in the contract that Welles signed with RKO Pictures. He was signed on to write, direct, and star in 2 films. However, there are 2 noticeable clauses in his contract. The first clause made it so that no executives from RKO could see any footage of the film without Wells' approval. Like, Wells had to agree to show them the footage. They couldn't just, at the time, it was not heard of. If an executive of a film wanted to see the footage, they were just allowed to see the footage. They didn't have to ask the director's permission or anyone else's permission. They just, but not in this case. They had to get Wells' permission. The other part of the clause stated that there were no cuts allowed to be made to the film without Wells' approval. Now, what this meant, basically, was that Wells had nearly total and complete control. He was allowed to create the entire story by himself, with no one telling him what he could or could not do. He could hire whoever he wanted to be on his cast and crew, and he had final say on the cut. This was completely unheard of at the time, especially for a first-time filmmaker. And it's something that actually carries on throughout the history of film. What I think is one of the things that made Citizen Kane so great was that Wells was allowed to just create something himself, and he really didn't have to answer to anyone or have anyone else trying to undo what he had done. Now, of course, the film is not without controversy, and the controversy came in the writing. Wells' co-director was Herman J. Mankiewicz, and they were both basically working on their versions of the script. And then I believe Wells took his script, and he took Mankiewicz's script. They took parts of Mankiewicz's script they liked, and put them into his, and that's how he made the movie. And of course, at the time, Mankiewicz was not going to be given any writing credit at all. And he threatened to go public with this and go to the Screenwriters Guild, which he actually did apparently file a grievance with the Screenwriters Guild, but then would rescind it. Now, from the research I did, what I gathered was that the contract Mankiewicz signed to work on the film had him brought on as a script doctor. And what a script doctor is basically someone who's brought in to make slight changes or like little corrections to like an already established script, and they basically never get a writing credit. It's like in a sense like a thankless job. Eventually, though, the issue was resolved when RKO agreed to give Mankiewicz a credit on the film, and he was credited as a secondary writer. I also believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Wells was actually on Mankiewicz's side and wanted him to be credited as well. Now, personally, how do I feel about Citizen Kane? If I look at it from a simply technical standpoint of filmmaking, I cannot argue it is not the greatest or one of the greatest films of all time. However, I can understand why some people may not enjoy it. The first time I watched it, I was not a fan of it. It was, I guess for lack of a word, I was bored. And the story is very good, but it's a very long film. But I just couldn't get to that point in the film to care about it. I wasn't entertained. However, though, I've now I cannot argue it is not one of the greatest films of all time, and my final review of it is an A+. Citizen Kane is that great of a film. If you are a film student, if you are a film buff, you just want to watch a movie that highlights all the great things about filmmaking, Citizen Kane is the top of the list. So yes. So that is my review of Citizen Kane. And thank you very much for watching this, and please hit the subscribe button. I put out new videos every Monday and Wednesday. I also live stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/marvelous_Drew. on Sunday, Thursday, and Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you for watching. See you next time.